What's happening, ladies and furries? My name is KotyTang. So Sonic Frontiers has apparently turned out to be the greatest Sonic game to ever exist. It may be even the game that will finally dethrone the Adventure series as the community consensus for the best Sonic game.
You're comparing yourself to me?
But when it comes to the game itself, the design, the music, it's actually pretty solid. It's got me feeling hopeful for Sonic, as Sonic Frontiers has officially reset the franchise. Here's your major spoiler warning ahead for those who plan to experience the story of Sonic Frontiers. Sonic Frontiers is set an unspecified amount of time after Sonic Forces, and it also makes constant references to almost every major Sonic game. Of all things, even Sonic Boom and the IDW series are referenced. And by doing that, that makes Sonic Boom and the IDW series entirely canon. Even though Sonic Boom is literally set in an alternate universe, but according to Ian Flynn, they're all the same. These references happen through characters bringing up many events that had happened in each piece of media. I like the idea of there being an overall canon that's confirmed to be followed, but you literally cannot just reference things that have never happened inside any of the games and just pretend it's always been part of the canon. By even throwing Styx's name into the fold, you are referencing something that doesn't even exist in the same universe. And by mentioning Tangle, you're bringing up a cavalcade of unexplored Sonic media. It's just typical Ian Flynn writing, which is almost entirely based on referencing as much Sonic media whenever he can, however he can. But with Frontiers, we'll be able to explore his idea of how to write a Sonic story even further. What's hilarious about that is that's where Sonic Frontiers gets damn near everything wrong in execution, characterization, and narrative. It sucks that I even have to say the story is bad, but that's because the progression of the plot is so jank. Sonic is transported to Starfall Island. He and either Amy, Knuckles, or Tails wonder what all these ruins are doing out here. Sonic and friends collect the Chaos Emeralds, Sonic goes supersonic and fights a Titan, then it repeats 3 more times. Sonic finds out an ancient civilization brought the Chaos Emeralds here, but not the Master Emerald. Eggman and his new creation team up with Sonic, and then Sonic and Eggman's creation blow up the moon. There's no story here. And I'm genuinely serious, there is no story. But if you don't believe me, sit tight and get ready to be pissed off as I go over how meaningless everything this game shows is. The storylines of every island have absolutely no bearing on the other. Each one could legitimately be placed in any order, as none of the characters interact with each other outside of one scene each where they offhandedly mention the other. Everybody is basically just doing a bunch of random activities until they happen to come across the Chaos Emeralds, just because reasons, which allows Sonic to progress. Yet for Sonic, he has to go through a long list of getting vault keys to unlock the emeralds that he finds. My question was, why are emeralds just laying around the island while the rest of them are locked away? That's because the story is entirely random, and the escalation of it is non-existent. In every aspect, it is poorly managed. Thankfully, it's extremely simple so it isn't confusing, and everything important to the narrative is only seen in the very last island, because nothing is explained about anything otherwise. Because of this incoherent plot, it'd be best to dive into each character's storyline individually. The recurring themes of this game deal with acceptance, new surroundings, moving on, and becoming something more than oneself. So the themes can be narrowed down to exploration and self-discovery. We'll start with the character who had an entire animated short dedicated to developing him for his role in the game, Knuckles the Echidna. Let's see how he falls into this narrative. So Knuckles' story actually starts before the game begins in the Sonic Frontiers prologue, Divergence, beginning with Knuckles asking why he was chosen to protect the Master Emerald. He relays the story from thousands of years ago in Sonic Adventure 1. He then ponders on some questions. Who the emerald belonged to, who created the Emerald Shrine, where they are now, and in the end, he expresses his longing to adventure, like Sonic and all his friends get to do. Knuckles proceeds to explore and discover more of his own island, until he stumbles across a Chow holding a weird mask stuck in the wall, which we'll later discover belonged to the Koco. We'll get back to those guys later. Knuckles breaks the wall the mask is stuck on, and picks up a gear that falls out. He discovers ruins that he speculates are even older than his own. After placing the gear inside, he's transported away from Angel Island, onto a group of islands called Starfall Islands. He assumes it's Eggman's doing and is attacked by robots, which he quickly dispatches. A newcomer appears in front of Knuckles with a Titan behind her. This character's name is Sage, and we'll get to know her soon. Sage encases Knuckles inside of this contraption, and he realizes that his body is digitized, as he's trapped in cyberspace, and thus sets the stage for Sonic Frontiers. It's a great short story with solid animation and really good framing that only runs for 6 minutes, but after that is where things take an unfortunate turn. Now, you'd assume Knuckles would have a huge role in this game, exploring his life on the island, what the Chaos Emeralds mean to him, how his civilization came to be, why he was chosen to guard the Emerald. Well, you get none of that. Sonic Frontiers throws away the sole character that has a direct reference to everything the story is about. Actually, Knuckles doesn't play any role at all. The way that you interact with characters in this game is just through finding them in the zone, and then they'll attempt to speculate how the ruins work and where they're coming from over and over and over and over again. Each character is given one flashback as well, which displays an event that wiped out the Kocos originally, and that's how the actual story of the place is mostly given, through flashbacks. What this means is that everything that could have been in the story has already taken place, and you cannot learn anything without the story delivering it to you in small doses. Breath of the Wild actually chose this method of storytelling, but there it made sense because the past was secondary and only lent you a chance to see what started a war that you're actively involved in. In Sonic Frontiers, the story is entirely autonomous from you. There was a war, and the war already happened, and now it's over. The narrative of the game is that you're trying to work your way to the next piece of the puzzle to discover what happened to these people. So it's not an active story in any form because the story already happened. There's nothing more to it. Nothing can be added on or expanded. After hours of speculating, Knuckles' story ends, and we walk away learning that the civilization shares a lot of similarities to Angel Island. That's it. That's Knuckles' entire story. He isn't seen in the story again until the end, where he just cheers Sonic on beside Tails and Amy. Knuckles' story really only explores one question brought up by him in the prologue, but it doesn't even answer it directly. The conclusion to Knuckles' story is, maybe the people on Angel Island started on Starfall Island, but maybe they didn't. And then it literally throws Knuckles to the side when you're done with that area of the game. One of the last things Sonic says to Knuckles is, why don't you leave Angel Island and explore if you want to adventure so badly? And Knuckles literally just says, yeah, good idea. So we set Knuckles up to once again protect his beloved Emerald, give us all these questions and prepare us for the deep dive into Knuckles' character, just to tell us to forget about all that because Knuckles is literally just going to leave and do his own thing. What was the point of that? There's such a clear inconsistency in the writing and how everything is handled just from that one example. This method of story tease is used for every single character in this game. A character presents something they want, and then they're like, after this game ends, that's what I'm gonna do. What's the purpose of this game again? Tails is the third character we get to save. This is where we discover that every time Sonic saves somebody, it actually affects him negatively, and he starts to get cyber corrupted, and he will likely be killed from constantly interacting with cyberspace. Tails confirms the obvious. Everything is hyper advanced. The ancients work off neurotechnology. They use the Chaos Emeralds. There's no way to replicate the technology the ancients had made, especially without the Chaos Emeralds. We also see the assumed end of the ancient civilization as the island is attacked by lasers. Tails ironically makes a valid storytelling point. The war is already over. Why are we doing chores for the long gone spirits? To which Sonic says to bring them peace, which may be a good plot line for a side story, but what is the purpose of doing this for the main plot? Oh, that's right, for some reason Chaos Emeralds pop out when you do side objectives. Tails is also the only character outside of Sonic and Eggman to speak to Sage. She just asks if Tails trusts Sonic, and then she's like, okay, cool, you're all gonna die, and then she leaves. Tails' story comes to an end with him saying how he's tired of doing literally nothing to help the plot, which is actually true for some of the things he's in, but is also not true for other things he's in. So Tails decides he's gonna go on his own adventure without Sonic to grow as a person. Sonic and Tails arrive on the next island together and discover they need to activate 6 pillars in order to bridge the gap between dimensions and save everyone from cyberspace. That's when we get the full plot of the Ancients revealed. I say full because we really just get short cutscenes that only explain select moments of the Ancients' history. According to Sage, the Kocos were accessories that the Ancients wore inside their bodies, but the accessories somehow ended up harboring the minds and wills of the Ancients. So out of a technicality, the two are the same thing. Through Eggman's findings, we discover that the Ancients' origins actually fall in line with Chaos's. Not the Chow bit, but the part where they look like liquid people. Well, apparently, after years of radiation, then they turned into Chows, which I will admit, that is a clever way of introducing the lore of Sonic Adventure 1, and it won't knock them for finding a way to tie it up like that. Maybe you thought the Ancients mutated into the Echidna. That would explain the origin of the Echidna and why they deal with the Chaos Emeralds, but Chaos is a mutated Chow, and Echidnas are not mutated Chows, meaning the Ancients are Chows now. But there's more. See, this door that Knuckles found was actually a gateway to another dimension that leads into cyberspace, and the gear he used is essentially the key that activates it. The ancient civilization were a bunch of extremely advanced aliens from outer space that use highly advanced technology powered by Chaos Emeralds, especially neural technology, so they can literally upload their entire brains into a digital space that they call cyberspace. And the door that Knuckles opened is just one of the major ways into cyberspace. Sage then used that anomaly to trap Knuckles in a cyber cage, but then Amy and Tails were also trapped, but Sonic wasn't, because he can find his way through cyberspace. Well, according to Sonic, it's because he remembers the place since it's based on his memories. So why couldn't Amy, Tails, and Knuckles get out as well then? Well, allegedly, they got a unique form of cybersex and were forced to see flashing images of the Ancients instead of their own memories to travel through, because reasons? Well, the player does need somebody to play as, and somebody has to be mobile to save everybody, so why not just make Sonic completely unaffected? I'm sure that decision doesn't have a single hole in it. Sonic Frontiers confirms the origin of the Chaos Emeralds as being from space. It doesn't say who made them or if they were made at all, it just kinda shows the Ancients using them. But the Ancients' original planet was blown up by a godlike being, forcing the Ancients to travel through the universe, until the Chaos Emeralds reacted to a power source that was coming from Earth, which forced their navigation systems toward the planet. This mysterious power source turned out to be none other than the Master Emerald. How there is a Master Emerald on Earth at all if the emeralds came from space on an unknown planet? Well, there just is. And that's the furthest the writers explored the history of the emeralds, so that's what they went with. The Ancients now made their new homes on planet Earth, across the Starfall Islands, maintaining all of the knowledge from their previous home in cyberspace. However, the being that destroyed its planet had followed them all the way back to Earth. In response, the Ancients created these beings, the Titans that Sonic has been fighting this whole time, to combat the enemy that was returning to them. The Ancients failed to combat the enemy, but the being was successfully locked in cyberspace, never to be heard from again until tens of thousands years later, Eggman stumbles upon it and reawakens the evil, and shortly after, Knuckles happens to come across the door that leads him here, and Sonic and Tails and Amy get sucked up inside the giant portal as well. There's a voice that keeps talking to Sonic throughout the entire game. This being is known as the End. The End is a moon, and it tasks Sonic with destroying the Titans and retrieving the Chaos Emeralds, which Sonic assumes will save his friends. The moon is actually the very being that destroyed this ancient civilization of people, and it's been guiding Sonic to destroy the remains of the Ancients and steal the Chaos Emeralds so that he can bring the digital world to reality, effectively releasing the moon. In the final portion of the game, after Sonic unlocks the 6 pillars that control the split between dimensions, Sonic is fully cyber-corrupted and becomes trapped in cyberspace. Yet, of course, the ever so unearned power of love saves the main character for no reason other than that the writers couldn't find an agreeable solution to the problem that they had been crafting since the beginning of the story, rendering the entire point of Sonic getting cyber-corrupted completely pointless, because it was solved just as fast as it came, with no repercussions. So what was the point of having Sonic become cyber-corrupted exactly? Well, that's the very definition of fake conflict. Cyber corruption has been festering in Sonic since he saved Amy, and only getting worse every time he saves somebody else. And it became even worse when he unlocked the dimensions. But in reality, cyber corruption has never affected Sonic's ability to perform, and the issue was resolved in a matter of seconds with minimal effort, and nothing came of it. Cyber corruption doesn't have any narrative value. It's just used to make people go, oh no, Sonic might die, look at how much he's struggling. Uh-oh, Sonic just got fully cyber corrupted. The heroes gathered together, held hands, said some words about what they wanted, and Sonic can't miss that. And then they disappeared and Sonic was instantly better. He's all better now. Yay! Does it matter where anybody just disappeared to? No, because after Sonic defeats the end, everybody is perfectly fine. Will it ever explain where they went? No, it doesn't. And they aren't harmed in any way when they appear again, so it doesn't really matter. It's an entirely separate conflict that is never explored or even brought up. The end dies, and then the three of them pop out of the portal, say hi to Sonic, and then everybody leaves. The final villain was non-existent, as is always the case with people writing overly simplified stories. The final boss is literally a moon, a celestial being in the literal sense, but that's it. They're a giant moon that says they're eternal and the most powerful being that Sonic will ever face in his entire lifetime. They've looked through Sonic's entire history and nothing even comes close to competing with them. And then Super Sonic monkey fists the moon and Sage heroes herself because the moon begins to self-destruct, as you do when you're gonna die. It's supposed to be this emotional moment where even Eggman is upset because he just lost his daughter, and the audience is supposed to be brought to tears by this character who has been pulling at our heartstrings throughout the story and must sacrifice herself and everything she's learned up to that point. Her dying words are asking Sonic to please look after her father, Dr. Eggman. But of course there's an end credit scene where Eggman literally reawakens Sage on his computer because she's an AI and it's just a piece of data that is constantly updated to whatever system her Wi-Fi can connect to. She calls Eggman father, and he's all, that's my girl. Which means she remembers everything that has happened up to that point, rendering that entire scene of her sacrificing herself in this very sad display where she even gets an entire theme song about a father-daughter relationship pointless. I want to talk about this relationship between Sage and Eggman because it's weird as hell. Eggman spends basically the entire game trapped in cyberspace because Sage deemed it would be safer for him. It comes to the audience attention that Eggman sees Sage as his daughter and she sees him as his father. I find that so out of character for Eggman to create something and then see it as his child, especially if the reasoning is gonna be just because she protected him in cyberspace. Eggman has many creations, and not once has he ever looked at them as family. Even further, the majority of his robots are more than capable of protecting him from literally anything, breaking through whatever defenses, antivirus, and anything else that people have tried to throw at him. So adding that as some incredible feat that Sage can do doesn't make her special in any form, and her ability to perform is literally flawed. She's overloaded with emotions, she can't control the Titans, she constantly backtalks Eggman, correcting him and telling him he's wrong, she suggests Eggman should team up with Sonic otherwise he's gonna die, you know, his arch nemesis, and she even fails to defeat Sonic multiple times. All things that Eggman doesn't like at all, and all things that have always made him angry. Her only redeeming quality is that she's adorable? What? Before Sage, the majority of the robots Eggman created were generally referred to as boys. So now that he's created a girl in the form of a human child, he's its father? Where the hell did this emotional attachment that Eggman has never displayed toward anyone or anything come from? Eggman literally doesn't have gender bias. He's perfectly fine with hurting anybody, whether they're a guy or a girl. This relationship gets pretty freaking disgusting, especially when I heard Memo 16 of Eggman's voice logs. You gotta hear this dialogue.
She's the best. It's a program. An adorable program, a very personable program. I wonder if she has a preference.
What the hell to this thing. And then in the next 3 dialogues, he refers to her as his family? What kind of daddy-daughter kink am I hearing in my Sonic right now? At the final island of the game, Eggman just decides he's going to help Sonic because Sage said so. That's literally it. Sage said help Sonic and you'll live. And because he creepily sees her as his attractive daughter, he's just like, okay, fine, and help Sonic achieve Supersonic. Remember how I said that Sage dies at the end? You're supposed to care about Sage in a Shadow the Hedgehog sort of way, but unlike Shadow, Sage actually holds absolutely zero weight in the story. Her purpose is just to constantly tell Sonic he's gonna die, and that she can make the Titans angry enough to attack him so that he will die. She is also shown to be exploring the deeper meanings of love and family through watching Sonic interact with his friends. Because of course, one of the most cliche character arcs is the evil, emotionless character that learns about love, family, and friendship, and becomes a better person in their final moments. It's a classic. There's nothing wrong with writing that plotline in itself, but they didn't even attempt to make a story out of it. They lazily added in scenes while they were writing and basically asked themselves, what if Sage watched Sonic and Tails talking to each other right now? So they threw Sage in the background of multiple cutscenes where Sonic was talking to his friends and called it character development. We're supposed to care when Sage dies, but she dies moments after being added to Sonic's party after hours of her doing nothing significant. There's even a shot of Eggman upset at the end because, you know, he's in love with this little girl. I don't understand how anybody thought this story was even remotely put together enough to garner an emotional response from a character that is only fleshed out for 2 scenes. You can't just make a character, demand that I care about them, and proceed to kill them after showing them doing absolutely nothing the entire game. From the very start of the game, it's already hinted that Sage sees Eggman as more than her creator. That's literally how the character is presented. Her having a bond with Eggman is not new. That's not development. That's just her character. That's who she is. Eggman and Sage literally start the game with a close relationship. She's designed to make Eggman her #1 priority. Even the memo log proves that Eggman quickly saw her as more than a computer program thanks to all the things she had been doing for him before and after Sonic arrived. The only change to Sage's character is that she realizes she hasn't simulated a scenario where Sonic helps Eggman, and that makes her realize she needs to push Eggman to help Sonic. And then when she successfully does this, she throws herself at a self-destructing moon shortly after. Everything this game's narrative attempts to present is a concept. It is not a plot. There is no tangible character drama. There is next to no story progression. There are no meaningful interactions among the cast that come from moments in the story. Nobody is better or worse by the end of the narrative. Nothing about anything changes. This is not a plot. This is a storyboard put onto the big screen. The characterization for this game is so bad. There's multiple interactions among the cast that they have for Sonic, but it's always a one-on-one. Nobody travels with Sonic, so we don't have Tails interacting with Amy, and we don't have Knuckles interacting with Tails. Even though they have all been shown to be capable of moving around, and even Tails was shown to be capable of leaving the island he was on. The majority of the interactions usually consist of Sonic and one of his friends looking at the ruins and repeatedly asking each other, what are these ruins? Do you think the Chaos Emeralds have something to do with them? Why is something so old so advanced? This is definitely alien technology here, but every now and then we get a look at what the characters are actually thinking about. Boy, does it make me conflicted on every character. It's the type of interaction that would genuinely be great in a story that was actually flowing, but in Frontiers, it's just randomly added in dialogue brought on by nothing more than the character being bored and walking around the island. There's never a moment in the story that made the character feel a certain way. It's always brought on by things on the side, making it extra content rather than the primary conflict. The changes and thoughts that these characters experience basically become a dialogue with the writer to the audience rather than a moment in the narrative that has genuinely shaped the character. Considering that they now just combined all of the canon, Tails' character makes absolutely zero sense. Realistically, at this point, his character has become unsalvageable. Were Sonic a TV show or a movie, they would never get away with completely destroying his character the way they have. Thankfully for Sega up until this point, Sonic has been pretty episodic, with it always being questionable where any of the games could even take place, as the majority of them could technically take place at any moment in the canon. However, thanks to Sonic Frontiers, the story has now been confirmed to have always been chronological, meaning everything has happened in the order that it was released, meaning everything is canon, even if it makes absolutely no sense. Because of the stories of each game now being seen as a series, Tails becomes one of the most depressingly broken characters. Ian Flynn is obviously going to work on transitioning him to his IDW incarnation, so he'll be much more useful as a character and maybe even more involved. Here's the problem. Canonizing these inconsistencies makes it so that Tails doesn't have a confirmed personality. Every writer will now be working off these broken facts to mold Tails into something the audience agrees with. Tails is basically at the mercy of whoever takes the reins of the story. The writer can pick an iteration of Tails, and no matter how the audience feels about it, it will be accurate. So this is Tails' character now. Not only is he an incredibly brave and self-sufficient inventor, he is also a coward who buckles under any sort of pressure. Tails is emotional, but he's also extremely logical. He's just a gullible child, but he's also as smart as Dr. Eggman. He looks up to Sonic and wants to mimic his lifestyle, but feels like he can't better himself if Sonic's around him. Tails is the most conflicted character in all of Sonic. And he's not conflicted in a complex way, he's conflicted in a convoluted way. Knuckles has reverted back to his Adventure 1 iteration, but the poorly written gullibility is finally removed. Knuckles is completely in his element in Sonic Frontiers, yet they don't take advantage of any of that. Knuckles is just a character who knows a semi-understandable amount of personal knowledge. He doesn't see past the surface and only knows what he recognizes from Angel Island and the Chaos Emeralds. And then his character just returns to being an adventurer who couldn't give a damn about the island and the Master Emerald. So I don't understand why they brought him back to his roots just for him to plan on leaving the island after the game ends. Amy's character is literally just somebody who wants to spread love to the world. That's the extent of her character. Also, if Amy is supposed to be a tomboy now, why the hell does she run like a dainty Japanese schoolgirl? I do agree these interactions help to flesh out the characters. Yes, they do bring up questions and things that characters have experienced, but no, they do not push the story along. They do not have any purpose in the narrative, and they are not influenced by the narrative itself. They overall are completely useless to the plot. I've already discussed how Eggman acts completely out of character, but there's one character in particular that is unforgivably unrecognizable, and that is Sonic himself. Instead of a hyper wisecracking guy, Roger Craig Smith was apparently told to voice Sonic in a much deeper, relaxed voice. So now, instead of sounding youthful and full energy, Sonic sounds like a generic 30-year-old white dude who's tired of working his 14-hour job and now has to reluctantly tend to his misguided family. Roger was already a weird-ass choice for Sonic, and he always made him sound old as hell, but now he's completely removed even a spice of Sonic's previous voices, making him the least accurate Sonic to ever exist. Sonic sounds so bad the way he's voiced in this game that it's actually jarring. It honestly feels like they hired an actor from a fan game rather than Roger voicing Sonic.
Now why would I want to disappoint you?
He loves to hear his own lips flap, but I gotta hand it to the Eggster. This place is epic.
Well, I don't like how Sonic has been portrayed recently, and his jokes have been cringeworthy at best and mind-numbingly awful at worst, but hearing Sonic the Hedgehog, not trash talking and making next to no wisecracks the entire game is wild. This is the dude that beat up government soldiers and started making a joke about how there was no food or movies on a military helicopter that just arrested him. This is the dude that got turned into a werehog, was thrown from space back down to an Earth that was literally splitting apart, and showed up the next day to tell Eggman, "Thanks for giving me a skydive trip the other day." Sonic displaying no emotion and not having fun is the most boring Sonic. It's one of the worst characterizations of Sonic I've ever seen come from an official source. When Sonic does talk, he's so obviously uninterested and fed up to the point that he's constantly spurting out this matter-of-fact dialogue with every line delivered as if he's just been moping around all day. But then out of nowhere, Sonic will deliver this overwhelming level of care and tenderness. The voice direction of this game is handled atrociously. Nobody sounds genuine. The acting is amateurish. The line direction is just whatever the actors felt like going with at the time. Nobody sounds anything like they're supposed to. The voice director completely botched on directing the pitches and emotions the actors were supposed to be using for their characters. Even Eggman occasionally delivers lines that don't sound like he's in the middle of a consistent conversation with somebody. And Mike is usually spot on with how he voices Eggman. There are literally 8 characters in this whole game. How is the voice direction so bad? Tell me, how is this game advertising a much darker and epic adventure than Sonic has had up to that point, failing so hard at delivering a serious and deep narrative? The previous Sonic games have had more attention to their story than this. Sonic 3 had more story than this game has. As great as this game is, Ian Flynn's first attempt at writing for a Sonic game has completely failed. Mischaracterizations, cringy fan fictions, obliterating the clear canon the games have had up to that point, failure to provide a proper narrative, and these pointless slice of life scenes added in to make the story seem complete when it's not. Oh, I'm forgetting something. Oh, Amy's story, right? I'm forgetting Amy's story. I'll tell you hers real quick. Amy's story is based around a love story between 2 Kocos trying to find each other, and Amy wants to help them get together. In one of Amy's final dialogue, she says she wants to share love with the world, and Sonic's like, oh, alright. Well, when you're done with that, tell me how it went. At one point, Sonic and Amy question if the Chaos Emeralds were used by the civilization, as if that much wasn't obvious considering they literally have pedestals holding the emeralds. Even Sonic mentions how unimportant what they're doing is, and then they're teleported to the past. And we see the Koco lovers die. They make it to each other, and they freaking explode.